Hey, it's Ron again. I hope that you're having a great day. Today we're going to look at Revelation chapter 12. And we've seen that John was going through the trumpet judgments. He took a break for a chapter and a half. And then after the sixth judgment, then he talked some about the seventh trumpet judgment. And now he takes a break again. For the next 4 chapters, he talks about some other things that will happen during the tribulation. It says in chapter 12, verse 1, "And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth." So John sees this woman. She has a crown of 12 stars. And from the Old Testament, we see that this represents the nation of Israel. And the 12 stars in her crown represent the 12 sons of Israel, who was also called Jacob. So that's what the 12 stars represent, who later became then the 12 tribes of Israel. So this woman that he sees represents the nation of Israel. And then it says that she was pregnant and about to give birth. And a few verses later, we'll see exactly who that was. She's about to give birth, and then it says in verse 3, "And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it." So then John sees this great red dragon, and this dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, from the book of Daniel, we see that these 10 horns represent 10 kings that will rule during the tribulation. And this red dragon represents Satan. So Satan will have control over these 10 kings who will rule at that time. And it says, when it says here, his tail swept away a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. Nobody knows exactly what those stars are, but everybody does agree that this verse just shows the incredible power that Satan has and will have during this time. And the dragon, so then this dragon, who is Satan, stands before the woman because he hates this child that's about to be born and wants to destroy it. And then it says in verse 5, it tells us who this child was. It says, "She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne." So here we find out that this child is Jesus. And that's what it says. It's a male child, and he's to rule the nations with a rod of iron. And a rod of iron means strong. He's going to have a strong kingdom. And so, as we saw last chapter, God said he would destroy the destroyers of the earth. And again, sin is so destructive, and all these evil things are happening on earth. This war and all kinds of death and pain because of sin in people. And so Jesus, when he comes back, the first time he came as a suffering servant, as a humble servant to pay for our sins and to tell us the truth. But the second time, he's going to come as a powerful king. And he needs to be powerful because he needs to put down the evil in order for the world to have peace and security and happiness. And so that's what he's going to do. He's going to put down this evil, and he's going to make the world the best place. It's going to be an incredible time. And we'll see some of that later in the book of Revelation. And then it says that he was caught up to heaven, or to the throne. Satan tried to destroy Jesus, even to the point that Jesus was crucified. But that even ended up being a victory, because through his crucifixion, Jesus purchased our forgiveness for every sin we've done. He paid for them on the cross, so that all we have to do is say, "God, please forgive me for my sins through Jesus' death. Count his death as payment for every sin. All my sins I want put on him at the cross. And please come into my life and make something good out of it. Take control of it." And then we can have forgiveness and have a relationship with God and have an incredible new life. And then it said, so Jesus then is caught up to be with God after that. And so Satan then, he can't hurt Jesus. He can't destroy Jesus. He lost the battle there. So then he turns to the nation of Israel. And it says in verse 6, And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. So this verse 6 here part is still future. Jesus has already come and died for our sins, but in verse 6 here, this is going to happen during the tribulation. So what will happen is, from looking at Matthew chapter 24, they're told, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the temple, to flee. I've talked about before how halfway through the tribulation, this Antichrist will claim to be God, set himself up in the temple as God, and demand to be worshipped as God. And he says when that happens, then he's going to go after Israel. So that's when Israel's going to be in danger. So it says flee to the mountains and hide. And so what's going to happen is, he says here, they'll flee to the wilderness where a place is prepared by God, and she's going to be nourished. So Israel will be protected and taken care of for 1,260 days, which is the second 3.5 years. So that's that second half of the tribulation. And so that's where we're going to stop today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.